So this is a collaboration. This is a collaboration between our two organizations, and it's currently being incubated within Technology for Wildlife. All three of us are based in Goa and working in coastal conservation. And the solution we're going to introduce to you is very much born from our experiences and mutual passion and a deep belief that the conservation of coastal ecosystems will help address biodiversity and climate crisis. So the problem that we're looking at is climate change and the associated ecological crisis. And the people that are our customers are organizations and people with a duty or inclination to address climate shocks and stressors. And there are already plenty of people in this space. Significant work has already been done through nature-based solutions and ecosystem-based restoration, specifically to address this issue. However, since we're from the sector, we feel that there's a need and possibility to make projects more transparent, more scientifically responsible, more inclusive, and financially sustainable. And we think all of this would allow for our solution to be more scalable. So what we want to do is reimagine coastal conservation, and our mission is to deliver sustained and inclusive financial incentives for mangrove and seagrass conservation. So we want to work with our partners to conserve mangrove and seagrass ecosystems. And through this, we will address the climate crisis through carbon sequestration, through protection of coastal habitats from saltwater intrusion, from flooding, through improved fisheries, coastal livelihoods, improvement in air, water quality, and temperature in the region, as well as conservation of biodiversity in these ecosystems. And how are we going to do this? So we envision our role as a facilitator. We'll identify specific needs of our customers, which includes the private and public sector, insurance companies, as well as philanthropies, and meet these needs through ecosystem services, and then raise funds for the protection, rehabilitation, restoration, and plantation of mangrove and seagrass ecosystems at relevant sites and deliver verifiable impact through quantified ecosystem services. And Nisha is going to talk more about our approach.
Okay, so the way in which we are approaching this is that we'll first assess whether it is possible to meet the needs of our customers, our partners. We'll analyze institutional systems, we'll analyze socio-ecological systems, as well as natural systems. And then we'll look at the risks of actually taking forward this work. Using that information, we'll evaluate the problems that needs to be addressed and whether we should intervene and can intervene. And then we'll design and implement the conservation actions in an equitable way with transparency, inclusivity, and in creative ways. We'll link the ecosystem services that are a result of the restoration and conservation work, and we'll continue to monitor and evaluate the conservation outcomes as well as the markets for new opportunities. This is just to give you an idea of the kind of values that we will expect from the ecosystem services that will be delivered from the conservation of these of seagrasses and mangroves. And these are our targets within 10 years to restore about 50 hectares of seagrass and mangroves. And this is just the carbon services, the carbon sequestration services that we hope to achieve. In terms of the market potential, there's plenty of opportunity. In 2020, 24 Indian companies, including large corporations like Reliance, Mahindra, ITC, pledged to become carbon neutral. Additionally, 56 companies in India and over 1,500 globally have committed to the UN Science-Based Targets Initiative. Some of these are looking for additional emissions reductions, and we're working with them, like Tata Chemicals and Apollo Tyres. And then, of course, the government has mandates to reach their climate targets. India's headline Paris Pledge was to reduce emission intensity of its GDP by 33 to 35% by 2030, and that's over the 2005 level. As you can see here, we are already working and are networked with some of the big market players, and this is how we plan to reach out to our customers through our network. In terms of the challenges and opportunities, of course, accessing the ecosystem markets is going to be challenging, in part because the markets for many of these services are either extremely complicated, as with the carbon markets, or just simply don't exist. For example, the regulating or the flood control and erosion control markets and the supporting systems, timber services or production, which are more indirect in nature, are simply not traded on the market at the moment. The values of most of the ecosystem services of seagrass and mangroves are therefore undersupplied. But there is opportunity to create markets where these don't exist. And this is what we're looking for in terms of help. We'll also be challenged by the fact that there is no strong legal basis for mangrove or seagrass payment for ecosystem services in India. And so here there is potential to create good practice, which can inform related decision-making and policy. And lastly, we need reimagination of mangroves and seagrasses from just run-of-the-mill vegetation or wasteland to superstar vegetation that we can't live without. And that's going to be tough because at present, there are needs and wants that people either can't imagine or don't know that these coastal ecosystems can meet. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nandini and Nisha. And now we open the session for follow-up questions and feedbacks for the mentors. Do we have any questions for Nisha and Nandini?
Hi, Nisha and Nandini. This is amazing work. I just wondering if you highlight or missed out the size of the installation that needs to happen.
Karthik, I don't think you're coming through clearly. I don't know if you want to chat your questions in later, or try to join from a phone, or yeah, try without your video. Mm-hmm.
My video, can you hear me?
It's a lot better. I'm not 100% sure it'll come in 100% clear, but try it again.
Sure. Just want to understand the size of the restoration work that needs to happen, or the conservation work that needs to happen. Because all I saw was you have a target of getting to about 50 hectares in the next, I think, 10 years. Right, and would be great to understand, is that basically based on one project that you're doing currently? How big can you go? What's the resources required to kind of achieve just this 50 hectares? What needs to come together to make it happen? Just want to kind of get I think your first question was, where is the market, right? So would love to kind of understand that.
Yeah, so this is partially based on projects that we're already working on. For the mangrove plantation, it's easier, it's cheaper. We can use and capacity build and skills build local communities and others to do the restoration work. Seagrass is harder because you do need skilled divers to go down and do the restoration work. But here we're also looking at technology assisted restoration. And we're hoping that we can create processes and systems that will help us do that in a cheaper and more efficient way. Having said that, there is a lot more space for seagrass restoration. For instance, in Park Bay alone, there's at least 900 hectares available for potential restoration at the moment. Mangroves less so. There's insufficient land, and what land is available might not be suitable for mangrove conservation. It's also a very saturated sector. A lot of people are trying to do mangrove conservation at the moment, and not necessarily in a responsible way. So so I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, I think so. When, especially in scenarios where you don't know who within the beneficiary set would pay for the benefit of your services, I think the most valuable thing you can do is to provide a sense of the scale and the kind of budget for doing your services, right? An estimate of saying, hey, for every hectare we need to bring under seagrass, every hectare we need to bring under mangroves. This is the cost for us to do that, and that would also include X number of livelihoods, or kind of what are all the other benefits, right? So as much as you can, if you can, apart from the carbon sequestration, obviously, which is extremely important, putting out a few of the other numbers around the collateral benefits and the overall costs would really help for somebody to kind of be able to kind of analyze whether this is something that they can get their hands around.
Absolutely. Yeah. Agreed. Thank you. We will try and do that.
Thank you, Karthik. And do we have any?
I'd like to remind everybody, sorry, Rajani, we've got in the chat box the feedback form again, so people can feel free to start leaving messages there as they become apparent. So just check the chat box, everybody. Thanks.
Yeah, hi. This is actually a new subject for me also. So let me be, let me ask you some layman questions rather than some expert questions, because I think that will actually add value to your presentation, which is actually, please don't mind my saying so, that it is actually a generic presentation in its form as it is today. But this needs to be integrated with some components which can add value to this whole thing. Like, for example, a revenue model or a business model, that how you are going to make money. So it could be a CSR income, you can show it, and then you have to also quantify things. For example, I think Karthik also asked the same question in a different manner, that what needs to be, in the sense that what will be the revenue of doing this 5 hectare to 50 hectare, different kind of projected revenue streams, and also the costs involved. And then, how you are going to quantify the whole work, like in terms of, I think impact is shown there, how much of carbon sequestration is going to happen. But I think more than that, and actually, for example, the ecosystem services in itself is actually very loosely defined today. It is not very also in your presentation. So here you have an opportunity to actually define in one of the slides what are the different kind of ecosystem services, and then out of those, let's say 5 or 7 services, you are going to address 1, 2, 3, whichever, and then so those 2, 3 services will be very pertinent to your, it will show as your main work. And then from this 2 or 3 areas, you are going to make this kind of a revenue. So that kind of a system, it could be also maybe in the form of a flow chart. You can also show it through a flow chart or something that will help. Then secondly, in fact, the work that you are going to do is actually very, very important. Mangrove restoration and this is a very dire need. It's a dire need of, I think, many island economies in the world. There are many island economies, if you heard. And their main work is that ecosystem restoration and all that kind of thing. So your work here, what you are going to do will have a repercussions all over the world, or maybe you can derive some of those best practices and apply it here. So you have to show the connection from the world, what is happening out there, or what is going to be a kind of universe of all the whole problem, So that problem quantification is also, I think, needs to be projected in a manner that is not there today. Okay, because the urgency of the situation needs to also come out. So this is my second suggestion. The third thing is that I think this to me, this looks a modest target, this 50 hectare of seagrass and mangrove restoration. I don't know. I mean, as I said, that please pardon me for being a layman here, but this area seems to be very small. Okay. So apart from this small area restoration, I think if there can be some other maybe, you know, incremental services that you can provide. So this is the end service. Okay. There could be some other services. I don't know which ones, but there could be some small pieces of the work that will make it happen, you know. So those components are missing. Those small things, if you can highlight that these all things will also maybe impact on some other things. I don't know, for example, the coastal areas. Now today the coastal areas themselves are actually, you know, very shabby, very I think, you know, very dicey also. Many places I've seen in Goa, I've been to Goa very frequently. So I've seen that, you know, many of these areas are actually barred from the public to go because they are very risky. So how you can actually maybe, you know, de-risk these areas by doing what? I don't know. So that is what I'm saying. So you have to de-risk some of these areas by doing certain services. So those can actually also maybe, I don't know, from I'm thinking loud, you know. So those all areas can also come up. So these are some of my suggestions. And then I think if you can make a general comment on all of this, so that will be good.
No, thank you. That's very helpful. These are actually some of the things that we've been working on as well. So we're trying to figure out, we've been through this process trying to figure out exactly how we would want to use our revenue and model. And I think as of now, we're trying to think of ourselves as in the future being set up as a foundation. And so I mean, this is something that we do want advice on like how to make sure that the flow of revenue is done in the most efficient way. And like,
All right.
if there's an excess, then what it should be redirected towards. But as of now, initially we were envisioning it as a company, as a private limited company, and of using the and of our profits basically being of a facilitation fee or a commission from our customers towards the restoration. But now we are thinking of ourselves as providing the impact, focusing on the impact and generating our operational costs through grants, and then using it like project wise, raising funds from each of these customers. But definitely having this is helpful because we need assistance in a sounding board for the revenue flow to make sure that
So in that regard, Nandini, can I offer one last piece of advice? That you please see DRR, you know, this disaster risk reduction is a huge subject. Okay. And I actually happened to attend one of the FICCI workshops in Delhi, which was on DRR theme. Okay. And then there were so many, I think it was an international pavilion in which some 5-7 countries participated, including Vietnam and Thailand and so many others, include Bangladesh. So they also have cells, you know, there are cells within the governments. This is called disaster risk reduction cell. Okay. So maybe you can access those cells and find out that what is it that the government of India or maybe, you know, respective governments are doing, because this is a problem across, as I said, it is universal. Okay. So what is being done elsewhere, it will give you a lot of ideas that what you can possibly do over here. Okay. So that will be really helpful for you. DRR is a huge subject. And then there is no paucity of funds over there because climate change is an, you know, mitigation is an urgency. So I'm sure that you can actually hit upon a jackpot, maybe if you, if you move in the right direction. Okay. Because a lot of people are required to work in these areas. So please do your bit of more homework. And then I think this is it's a very good theme. The only thing is that it needs to be refined and presented in the right context. So this is my advice to you. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, so just wanted to know, how are you getting this spatial analysis and other technology part being done? One of the three of you is having that capability, or to get it done outside?
No, I think we are equipped to handle it within the organization. So right now the collaboration is between Econiche and Technology for Wildlife. And Technology for Wildlife, that is our exact skill set of using spatial analysis and robotics. So we use satellite data and we use drone imagery to look at landscape and analyze it for conservation. So we've already been working on this in the last few years. So part of our process would be using the tech to find possible vulnerable areas that need to be restored, and then also combining that with archaeological records to see like what areas already had mangroves or seagrass and which might be good for restoration. So we use a combination of vegetation indices from satellite data, or we have drones for more in-depth if there's a smaller area when you're targeting for restoration. And we also have been using that to create 3D models of, say, mangrove patches to do estimation of carbon. So that is part of what we want to use within our methods, because currently mangrove carbon, there are very few projects, at least in the carbon market globally. There's a few REDD+ programs, but otherwise blue carbon is a fairly new venture because it was very difficult to quantify. Fieldwork for doing mangrove carbon estimation is quite laborious and cost heavy. So we'll be replacing that with the use of tech for this.
Okay, yeah, thanks. So effectively, this technology can be used anywhere in the world, then, irrespective of where you're located, because you utilize satellite. Of course, the drone may have to be flown at the site.
That's true. But
question. Yeah.
But that's also possible to do remotely. So it's possible to design the whole flight and then give it to an operator in that region and let them do the final flying and then get the data back and analyze it.
Oh, okay. And the other question, since I work with an insurance company, you said there's some offering for insurance in your project. So how does that work?
Sure. Nisha, would you like to talk about this?
Yeah. So we've been in touch with especially coastal farmers who have issues with saline water ingress into their farms. And so their insurance premiums are quite high. So one of the ways in which we would like to help them is to look at whether we can create mangrove bioshields or coastal ecosystems that will prevent the saline water ingress into their farms. But the other thing is that we're also looking at the city of Panjim, which faces flooding each year, for which the infrastructure damage is extremely significant. And again, insurance premiums are extremely high. So looking at whether we can, there were historically mangroves in these areas, whether we can plant the mangroves and bring down those costs.
Okay, yeah, thanks. So I think the problem is quite extensive. It's not just limited to the areas you're looking at, it's widespread in other coastal areas also. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just to add on to what Nisha was saying, I mean, I completely agree with you, Sarkul, that we were discussing how the impact of climate change and weather-related events has like trebled from I think around $200 billion in 1980s to over 100 like and $0.62 trillion or something, $1.62 trillion in 2010s, and a lot of that cost has been borne by the insurance sector. And soon it's predicted that will pass on to customers because their premiums will increase. So we are very interested in exploring how we can tap into this sector to account for climate risks. And if we can work with an incentivization model, for example, can premiums of landowners who have mangroves on their land be reduced compared to those that don't, because that will reduce their risk of flooding. So those are some of the things that we're just beginning to speak to people in the insurance sector about to see what's possible.
Yeah. So I think those areas having saline ingress are generally considered too high a risk and never insured at all. So they're not covered. But there are other kinds of things, the cyclone or the storm and other things also which affect a little interiors, which could be mitigated through these kind of measures. So yeah, maybe at some point we'll talk about from the insurance side here later on. Thanks.
Nandini and Nisha, I have a follow-up question. So these kind of insurance products, they are very much evolved and well developed in the West. So I just want to know more from you. Rather, I'm curious to know that who are the stakeholders who are developing these kind of products in the Indian ecosystem. Have you approached any one of them yet?
Not yet. We will be approaching them.
Okay.
Globally, we
And
talk to,
Yeah, so just to add to that, we're trying to build models around risk and quantify whether these are insurable at all, the coastal lands. That is the question that is confronting, whether these are economically active or just kind of protective measures that the government has to do. And if so, are those risks too high to be insured? The questions we're still trying to grapple with.
so I can't see any more question in the chat box. If we have any question for Nandini and Nisha, we are happy to take it up. And Nandini and Nisha, do you have any questions from the audience and the mentors that we have with us today?
not specifically, but it would really be helpful to talk to Emmanuel about the insurance sector part more specifically.
Yeah, and I just also wanted to explain like one particular project model that we had in mind, because we weren't able to communicate that much deep in the 5-minute time period. So I just wanted to explain like part of what we were envisioning to do is go to private landowners who currently don't have any incentive to plant or preserve mangroves on their land. And we want to then find the right customers in that area who are willing to, who need the ecosystem services and might be willing to financially support that plantation or conservation. So ideally, we would want to identify that area, generate enough customers. For example, if someone needs carbon credits, if, for example, we're in the city of Panjaman, they need assistance in flood protection, and bundle those services so that it provides a substantial financial support, and then go to the landowners and work as aggregators. So enter into agreements for say 5 to 10 years, saying that in this part of your land, you continue to preserve mangroves, and then combine, quantify and monitor ecosystem services across all of those lands, and then use those aggregated services to go to these customers and then funnel the funds back to the landowners so that they have incentive for keeping mangroves on the land. Because a lot of the coastal areas along the country are privately owned lands, they're not protected areas. So we're trying to find incentive to protect those parts of the coasts as well.
Thank you, Nandini. And I can see Dr. Pandey has raised his hand. So Dr. Pandey, would you like to ask your question? Dr. Pandey, can you hear me?
Yeah, yes. Right. So this venture, this project is very, it's a part of very huge problem. I'm really concerned whether it can be significantly handled by the team. And I would suggest that we need to get into more small and
Excuse me, Dr. Pandey, we are not able to hear you properly. Would you like to text your question in the chat box?
Okay. Yeah. Right now it's okay.
It's a bit better. Yeah.
Okay. So what I was trying to say that it's a part of a huge problem of climate change and challenged coastal ecosystem. I think once this project gets success, I think the whole world or globally it can be I mean, in a huge demand, because I think every country having coastal areas and coastal ecosystem needs. But as it looks that it is coming from scientific community, so it's better that think like business project, right? So that you can handle it and break into small milestones, so that people can understand. But I can say that I mean it's having huge potential and very timely for contemporary issue of climate change. Thank you.
So I just have one suggestion that you will need to have two entities. The private company will have to do consultancy work, and the foundation will have to do the grant and other work. So I think technically you will have to create two entities and keep them to get both sides running.
Yeah, that's actually exactly what we're doing at present. So right now, Technology for Wildlife is registered both as a company where we're doing service delivery for exactly this geospatial services. And now we're also registered as the foundation for grants for impact-based work. So that's also the combination that we're using currently for the incubation time of this project. But thank you for saying that. We've also been trying to see whether even after this period, whether we'll need to be foundation or split the structures or not.
I can also see Pulkesh from WRI India. He has also joined this call. Pulkesh, do you have any questions for Nandini and Nisha?
I have one doubt. Can I see your presentation once again? There was one slide on the before and after condition.
Sorry, could you tell me which slide you were referring to? I just walked through it, hanging for some reason.
He's mentioning before and after slide.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Sorry, it's hanging a bit. I'll just exit the presentation mode. 1 second. Yeah, you can see it now.
Yeah, so can you please explain a bit? I'm like slightly confused. So it seems that previously there are some vegetation, and after that, it seems that some trees are planted. So how exactly what happened in this particular area?
So this is just to be representative of the problem that we're facing. It's a drone image from Goa, and it's from an area that naturally or traditionally has mangroves. So in the before area, you can see in the what's marked between the lines, that's all mangroves. So it's protecting part of the forest. And then the next setting, it was just a 2-week gap. It's all been raised, and you can see the marks of the JCB on the ground as well. So this is privately owned land, which from where mangroves was removed, because right now there's no incentive for the private landowner to keep mangroves. In fact, if the mangroves like grow beyond a certain age and height, then they can no longer use that land for anything else. They can't use it for agriculture or for redevelopment. So a lot of people don't want mangroves on their land. So this was just like one image representing the whole problem that we're trying to address of like, how can we convince people to keep it on their land, because they are getting other ecosystem services already through the flood protection, fisheries and all, but what other financial incentive can we provide so that they don't want to do this?
Yeah. Thank you.
Nandini, I have one more question for you. How are you presently doing the extension related work with these private owners or the communities? Have you begun yet by interacting with the owners and explaining them. You also talked about like payment for ecosystem services. So have you done any pilot work so far?
So we were thinking about doing this in two ways. Like the first is the area that we know and are familiar with is the Panjim watershed. So the Mandovi and Zuari estuaries. And in that area, we have been speaking to landowners to get a sense of what the land costs and how much they would be looking to sell or lease. But at the same time, we're trying to envision what it would look like along the whole coast. And in other areas, for example, if we were to go to Park Bay or in we're looking at sites in Karnataka, there we would be partnering with community-based organizations who already have a relationship with the community there, so that you're not starting from ground zero, because we can't do that level up in each and every site. So in the area that we would likely to pilot, which is in our own watershed, we'll do part of that engagement ourselves, but everywhere else we are looking to collaborate with others.
So can I say that the market research part is still to be taken up?
I guess, I guess it depends on the project. So the thing is, because we were thinking of our whole impact as a more foundation model, we feel like the need for the work is already there, and there seem to be sufficient, like in our terms, customers or funders who want these ecosystem services. So in that sense, we feel like the situation is already right for us to go forward. So beyond that, it's just about finding the right project. So what we've been doing is, like, we have 3 different models in 3 different slightly different areas, and we're trying to assess for each of those which is most plausible, which is like easiest to fund. But all of them seem, the market research for all of those 3 individual projects is done, like they all seem like valid to implement.
Because we would need a wider consultation with the local communities and maybe some tools to record their thoughts and what they share with you, maybe through some exhaustive questionnaires or focused discussion with them. So I just wanted to explore, have you done that part of the work in these geographies?
No, we haven't done that yet because we haven't begun implementation of these projects yet. So this is the work that we've been doing on our own, is very much from the 2 different organizations and developing this concept that we want to launch. So through WRI, we've sort of been trying to crystallize what we would envision this organization to look like, get all the feedback we can for everything from branding and mission to like the revenue flow, and use this to like make our model as strong as possible, so that when we launch, we have as much preparation as possible.
So then I have a suggestion for you. Would it be possible for you to show a timeline in your slide deck? When do you want to implement this project and how far you want to take it up in the coming, say, 2 years, 3 years? Because you showed a 5 years plan on the slide, which mentioned about the benefits coming out of the mangrove restoration work. So I think having a clear timeline would be good to be there on your pitch.
That makes sense. They included.
And now, Amanda and Ashna, do you have any closing questions for Nandini and Nisha?
I think a lot of folks here have really taken care of it, but I wanted to say thank you for the opportunity to get to know about your business. And you can check some of the feedback on that form that's in the chat box for yourself and download it now. We'll also follow up with you via email probably tomorrow with the recordings. And that's from my side. We'll have another form for the next company coming up here quite soon.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. And now we have Shubham representing Puma Labs, and Shubham would be presenting next. So I request Shubham to share his presentation, and then we'll have a follow-up discussion.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Shubham.
Is it visible?
It's visible,
Yes.
not yet full screen.
Yeah.
So just hit the % button towards the bottom, maybe.
Yeah, it just.
Oh, there it comes.
Taking some
Perfect.
time.
So everybody here, I've got the form. So check the link box, the link, and click on it so we can be ready to leave feedback. Thanks. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I'll just. So we are crashed, and I'll just start with the problem. So deforestation is something which is familiar with everyone, and what we have also seen in the recent years is that rapid deforestation is also leading to forest fires, especially what we have seen in the Amazon very recently. On another note, there is another problem in India, which is crop burning. There is severe crop burning issue in India, which releases around 150 million tons of CO2 annually. And in fact, in New Delhi, from last couple of years, there has been a public health emergency declared due to the extremely bad air pollution, which is caused due to the burning of crops in the neighboring states. And this made us thinking that what if we use the abundant crop waste as an alternative to timber? Can we save the world's endangered forest? And this is where CRAS comes into the picture, where we put the waste into work by creating highly durable products, especially for furniture and construction applications. So here is one of our products, which is the biocomposite panels. It solves crop burning, it saves trees, and it is also non-toxic. Talking more about the product, the main innovation lies in the formaldehyde-free part. So formaldehyde is a known carcinogen. It causes cancer, and it is already banned in multiple countries. So the glue is something which is novel to in how we make these boards. The results that we have got is far superior as compared to a wood-based panel. We are also moisture resistant, and our technology is currently patent pending. So we compared our board with the best-selling board in India, which is Action Tessa. It's a wood-based board. In terms of mechanical properties, we were quite good. Just to give a number on the water absorption property, we were 7 times better than the best-selling board in India. So there is a 24 hours water absorption test where we dip the board for 24 hours and we see how much moisture it takes. About our model, we basically source the material locally from the farmers. We then put it into a decentralized engine where we make these boards. It is then sold to large furniture makers where it can be used for making furniture for example, companies like IKEA. And since we are creating a value-added product, we're able to give higher margins to the farmers as compared to what they are getting at present from the power generation and fuel application companies. So each facility that we would set up, it would save around 2 lakh boards, increase farmers' income by more than 40% per acre, and also sequester around 8,76,000 kilograms of CO2, which would have otherwise released by burning of the crop stubble. About the market, the Indian furniture market is around 270 billion INR. 90% of this market is currently dominated by plywood. Now, this is in contrast when it compares to world average, where majority of the market is usually MDF and particle boards. But the trends in the Indian market are also changing. One of the main reasons is that the plywood prices are increasing. Timber is banned in India, but unfortunately around 30% of timber is also illegally imported via Myanmar border. The government is also very proactive and they have good subsidies on non-wood-based panels. The GST on the non-wood-based boards is around 12% as compared to the 18% GST on wood-based boards. And lastly, the regulations, it is expected that the regulations around formaldehyde are also going to be changed in India. And that would also lead to, that could be a disrupting factor in the Indian market. Other than the boards and furniture, we also make products for packaging application. Here are 2 products which I would want to talk about. We offer customized packaging services. One of our clients is the beer company Anheuser-Busch. They are world's largest beer company. They have popular brands like Corona, Budweiser. With them, we have integrated with their barley farmer supply chain, where barley is used to make beer, whereas whatever is left on the barley farm is barley waste, which we use to create 6-pack beer packaging. The second case study is with the US company Stanley Black & Decker, where the product that we have chosen was a measurement tape product. It usually comes in a clamshell packaging, which is not recyclable, and a lot of Americans also get hurt by opening that clamshell packaging. So what we have offered to Stanley Black & Decker is a sustainable molded packaging, again made out of crop waste, for their measure and tape product line. So this is our team. We are two co-founders. I'm a chemical engineer from Imperial College London. My co-founder Himansha, Dr. Himansha, she is a PhD and postdoc from the University of Cambridge. Then we have a very experienced business team with 10+ years of experience in marketing, finance, and operations domain. Then our R&D team is comprised of design engineers, product engineers, research scientists. Here are our mentors who help us have helped us tremendously in building our company. We are also a Techstars company, and we have Claudia as one of our very key mentors. So the ask for us is that keeping the Land Accelerator in mind, we want to work on the carbon credit model, especially since we're offering a timber-free product. And so this is something very new to us, and especially looking into the Western market where this is, more mature. So this is something that we want to work on, and any guidance on that would be very helpful. We also wanted to know that if there are any bodies or organizations who could help us with conducting LCA of our product. And lastly, any introductions or connects with users of our product would be very helpful. Here are some of our partners who have helped us in terms of grants, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Shubham. It was a great presentation. And now we open up the session for questions and feedback. Also, the feedback link for Shubham is there in the chat box. So please share your thoughts in the attached form.
So how long have you been in business now?
So we have recently done the soft launch of our boards. So far we were in the R&D stage where we were working on formulating these boards, because a lot of people have attempted on making, crop residue based boards for furniture, but then they use formaldehyde as the glue. The major issue was that, of course, formaldehyde is carcinogenic, but it also creates in very poor quality boards as it does not form good bonds because of the silica and the wax layer on the crop residue. And this was the technical challenge that we took on. And so we spent significant amount of time in doing the R&D, and we were also supported by DBT and DST grants to carry out the R&D work.
Okay. And the strength and all that has been tested and proven.
Yes.
Okay, and so it is fit for furniture or also for other uses, construction and other purposes?
It is suitable for construction application also. And we are testing some other applications as well, because we got some client inquiries who want these boards for thermal insulation and acoustic purposes. We also did a fire retardantness test with plywood and these straw boards, basically. And what we found out was that fire propagates on wood material, whereas on crop straw it does not propagate, because especially rice straw contains high amount of silica, and it is an excellent material for construction, as it is better than wood for fireproof applications. So we are exploring some of these new applications with some clients.
Okay, so when do you plan to go commercial with this?
So currently we are setting up our production in Bangalore, and 90% of the work is already done, and we're just awaiting one last equipment which is delayed. And once we get that last piece of equipment, we are good to sell the products in the market. But we are already doing customer validation with these samples that we can create at lab scale, and also understanding what the specifications and requirements the client has.
And your technology has been patented?
Yeah, it is a patent pending technology.
Okay. Yeah, so what was that one point you said? Carbon credits, and then the second you use some short form.
Yeah, life cycle assessment basically. Life
What
cycle
is that?
analysis. Life cycle analysis of the
Oh,
product.
okay. Okay, life cycle, that will take its own time. Yeah. OSS. And what will be the relative cost between conventional board versus your board, cost effectiveness?
So we are cheaper as compared to the green ply and century ply boards, which is plywood basically. And we are expensive as compared to the particle boards which are present in the market, because the product is far superior in terms of strength. And also it is E0, which is formaldehyde free board.
Oh, okay. Right. So I think the market has to get used to this product. So you will have to launch it and introduce it and make it popular. And these companies which you have targeted, I think, will use it for packaging, for replacing conventional packaging material. And many other companies also will pick up that idea from there. Yeah. Yeah, good. So you're part of the NCL incubation, huh?
Yes, venture center.
Okay. Yeah, good. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, Shubham. I have a question for you. Like Mr. Emmanuel said, you need to introduce your product. So I'm keen to know what are the marketing strategies you are aiming to have with you for promoting your product. And also, have you been able to establish your backward linkages with a concrete farmer base who are going to supply you the raw material?
Yeah, so I'll start with the backward linkage. We have signed a LOI with an NGO, Vikasana. It's active in Mandya in Karnataka. And they have a network of around 20,000 farmers. So for our production in Bangalore, they will be basically supplying us the raw materials. That's one. So they have a network of very small and marginalized farmers. So we just collectively take it from them. The second one is that I think the question was on the customer
strategy.
Side. I forgot. So about the marketing strategies, we are targeting large furniture makers because, as Mr. Emmanuel also mentioned, we need to brand it and make it popular. So we are looking for tie-ups with big companies which can help us to popularize this product, because the distributors market in India is very conventional. We have done some surveys here in Pune, and they're not very open on trying out something new. We go with the architect's model. It is also very fragmented and it's going to take us a lot of time. Whereas if we go B2B directly to the furniture makers, not only we can also ride on their own branding, and once we have say one large customer, then it also will generate interest from other similar companies. And to be honest, these big companies have all the capacity to meet the supply from our side and can fulfill the capacity that we are planning right now. So we are in touch with one company already, which is Featherlight, which is also India's largest office furniture company. And they have been very keen on, switching to non-timber based products. So their focus is how they can get rid of wood-based boards, and that is why we have also signed a LOI with them on the customer validation part.
Okay, so are you planning to launch your product this year?
So we have already done the soft launch, and with some customers, again, we are doing some very small trials just to see how, just to see that, just to give the product to them so that they can touch, feel, and also do some kind of, small testing here and there for their reference. So we have sent a couple of boards to Featherlight for their testing at their testing center, and they are also playing around with our board. As there is a lot of customization that can be done in these boards, depending on the end usage.
And I couldn't see a financial ask in your presentation.
Yeah, so right now we are not immediately raising investments. We would want to, go ahead, we would want to set up a production, generate some revenue, And then once you have this data, then we would want to go for investments. So that our investors will also be happy to see some kind of revenue flowing in the company.
Great. Okay. Just one last question about your production plant. So have you been able to figure it out what would be the approximate proportion of your capital expenditure versus your total investment in your business?
I would have to get back on this question. It's not ringing in my head right now.
Okay. Okay. Thanks,
But
Shubham.
the capex is something that we have covered with the government grants.
Okay.
And that has already been ordered. And we have already ordered
Okay.
the equipments.
Okay.
For
Okay.
the next investments, I think the capex will not be covered for this one.
Okay. Thanks, Shubham.
So Shubham, just one supplementary question. I understand a lot of the furniture is imported from Malaysia and other places. So who are the largest furniture manufacturers in India? Maybe those are the people you should target. Like I think Godrej and some of these guys, they're importing from Thailand and Malaysia.
Yes,
gather.
even Federalite is importing from Thailand and right now.
So you should go there and I think show your product and offering and then see if you can make inroads in those markets.
Yeah, we are, in fact, if anyone is having any connect with Godrej, that would be quite helpful, because we have heard a lot that Godrej is looking into sustainable furniture and construction. So I think that's one of their CSR goals.
Yeah, can you just, this is a shot in the dark, but if you can send me a small thing, let's explore if we can find some leads. Huh?
Okay, thank you. Is there any other question?
Yeah. So can I ask?
Yeah, please.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So this is L.K. Pandey. I found it very exciting because I'm already working on this similar kind of project in India, and in fact, we started to address the problem of smog over Delhi, which you mentioned in your presentation. Right now, I can update you what is happening over here. I'm involved in the training part of this bigger issue. So our entrepreneurs have been working on different kind of projects for this common problem. So one Indian Oil Corporation has started installation of certain compressed biogas plants. I think several plants they are going to open in country. Number one. So I'm involved in the training of farmers through FPOs, so that they can collect and supply this paddy stubbles. Number one. Number two, sugarcane leaves and some other agricultural waste. Secondly, there are many entrepreneurs coming up to make pellets and briquettes, right? And those they are being supplied to NTPC kind of organization, right? So these two uses are very much, and then certainly we have created two categories. One is ex situ and another is in situ. So in situ, crop residue management that PUSA Institute has developed certain biodecomposer. It's selling like hotcake. So farmers are being advised and they are using it after after crushing the agricultural waste, and then they are spraying biodecomposer, and in 21 days decomposition is getting very fast. So that is in situ management, right? And ex situ management, that is one is raw material is after raking and baling, that is taken to power generation units to generate electricity, and number two, this briquettes and pellets, and number three, this CBG, any compressed biogas plus ethanol, right? So recently I visited one such plant in Fazilka, Punjab, where this for many years they are working, and the company is called Sampurn Ventures. Sampurn Ventures, you can find on net, right? So that is one thing. And then Indian Oil Corporation, of course, they are coming in big way. So I think there are various alternatives which earlier we were not working on this, but there are many ventures coming in. So I think this can help you in, while you are writing your case, business case. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And I think this is this is one field, because the quantity of waste that is generated here is 500 million tons. There's almost double the global plastic waste. So how we see it is that we need more the merrier in this field. And so we have done some surveys with pellets and biogas and even the electrification part as well. And where we stand out is in the Hello, am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where we stand out is, as compared to these applications, is in the value addition to the farmers, where farmers can in fact make money from this waste. That is where we are centric our model.
Shubham, one thing which is very interesting, which you mentioned here, that silica is fire resistant kind of material, which is present in stubbles, paddy stubbles. I think that is a great silver lining in your project. So I think you should also focus on that.
Okay, sure, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And I think it would be really great to connect with you. I would really want to know more about your work with the Farmers FPO and the collection mechanism that is being addressed.
Oh, I'm involved in the government-sponsored training programs. So just like Uttar Pradesh government is organizing such trainings so that farmers can collect and and even we have decided the price of stubbles and other waste. So it is Indian Oil Corporation is going to pay rupees 1.50 per kg for paddy stubbles. So we are working on that scale also.
Yeah, sure. So I think would be definitely really good to connect and have this discussion more in detail.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Shubham, I have one more question for you. I just want to know, have you done any competitors analysis in the landscape where you are planning to launch this product?
Yeah, we have done a lot of surveys with different customers who are present. And in these slides today, I only mentioned about Action Tesa because it's India's best-selling board. And we did an apple-to-apple comparison with their properties. That we are better as compared to we are better as compared to the best-selling board environmentally, but also in the health-wise, because our boards are not toxic as compared to what we see.
Yeah, I would then suggest it would be a very compelling story for your customers to buy your product. So try to have one slide that shows the competitive advantage, and also it would be good if you can place a screenshot of your certifications that show the unique features of your product which have been certified, like you said, something around the durability of the boards and other features. So it would be good to display your certifications.
Okay, yeah, I'll do that.
And I wonder if my colleague Amanda has any questions for you, Shubham. Amanda, do you have any question for him? Yeah, take your time.
I'm pulling up the response form that I was writing on. Excuse me.
Yeah, sure. Shubham, one more question. So you said you want connects with the sustainable furniture makers and also the life cycle analysis part. So when we connected offline, I had suggested you to share a brief one pager or two pager where you mention about the different aspects of your project that you want to work with the stakeholders, like the support you need from WRI. So you should be able to identify that particular part of your value chain. And based on that, we can reach out to relevant experts and resources to help you out in that.
Okay, yeah, I'll include all the things together and then I'll send it across.
Yes, so that we have one common document that clearly mentions your ask, and we are able to pass it on to the relevant people.
Okay, sure, I'll do that.
Yeah, thanks, Shubham.
No, I have a lot of small details that I've put in the form, and it looks like I'm the only person who's filled out the form. So if anybody's still here, throw a few bullet points in there. All right. Oh, it's just me and you, Kavita. Okay, no problem. Yeah.
Yeah. So Shubham, my colleague Amanda has already filled the feedback form. She has also sent the link in the chat box. So
Yeah.
I think we would be able to share with you the feedback form along with the recording by tomorrow. So it has a
Okay.
lot of inputs from the call. I think almost all the points have been captured by Amanda, and we would be sharing it with you.
Yeah. So I'll write to, like I see there are like questions posted by Amanda. So like, should I write back on email or like how do I answer it?
No, you don't have to respond to me. You make your presentation better. You answer your
Okay.
presentation, you add things to your slides. So I think a lot of my thing was around competition, around, so you started to get into what other competition is, but to really be precise about it, because none of us are going to be experts on wood. And so I liked some of the things you were showing. I really liked the sorry about my dog. I really liked the pie chart that showed how much wood they use, plywood they use in India versus the rest of the world. I wonder if it's possible to get that kind of a pie chart for the United States or for Europe, because the whole world might say, there's a lot of places that are doing a lot worse than India. So if you can show that some developed country is already jumping on this, then that might also show like, hey, this is the future, or just, take away that doubt. But more than that, we want to see how the boards are comparing with other things. I want to understand a little bit more about how important is this that it's formaldehyde free? Like, what does that really mean? I get that it causes cancer in general, but like, does it really, if it's in a board? Maybe the answer is yes, I don't know. Is it really bad for the manufacturers? Like, who are we protecting now that it's formaldehyde free? So that's an awesome impact point to add on there. And also it might be something that, like, as we were talking before, that's going to be patentable. Perhaps there's other bio-based boards that are made with formaldehyde and they're patented or not patented, but just really differentiating yourself, because right now maybe people won't be paying additional money. So we really need to understand the differentiators.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that was the main point.
Okay.
Shubham, do you have any questions for us?
No, I think I'm good. Thank you for the suggestions.
Yeah, so we are going to begin the mock pitching sessions in October, and we have already started it in the first half an hour of our Wednesday session. So we would request you to please work on the suggestions and the feedback, and hoping to see your new pitch, and would request you to join us in the mock pitching sessions. so that you get
Okay.
a follow-up and feedback on the new presentation as well. Thank you, Shubham, for joining us today. And,
And congratulations as well. All of these suggestions are not to say, I mean, you've done amazing work. You've got an amazing team. So it's really an accomplishment.
you.
This is just the last part at the end to make sure everybody understands how important it is.
yeah, these
Thank
are
you so
just the
much.
cosmetic changes. You have already done the 98% part of it. So
Yeah, but I think
thank you
it's,
everyone for.
I'll incorporate these changes, and maybe next time it will be much more better.
Thank you so much, Shubham. It's already so good. And I also want to thank Mr. Emmanuel and Dr. Lakshmikant for joining us today. Thank you so much. And we would be reaching out to you through the follow-up of this session. And we also request you to join us in the upcoming mentorship calls. So we are having these calls till 30th of September. So you can sign up for any of the companies of your interest. Thank you so much for joining us today, and looking forward to continue these mentorship calls from Thursday onwards. And tomorrow we are having a session with the impact investors. So I would request Shubham and Dr. Lakshmikant if you can join us tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you again. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Amanda,
everyone.
once again for connecting me also here. Thank you.
Yeah, we're so glad to have you join us. I think this was the first call.
Certainly, we'll try to join as much as possible. Yeah.
Everybody,
so I
have
think
a good.
oh. It's 23rd, right? 23rd?
Yes. It is 22nd tomorrow.
22nd. And I received one for 23rd also, right?
Okay, so I'm sorry, I thought you are talking about tomorrow's session. Yes, we are continuing the mentorship calls from 23rd onwards. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.